Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is XP Lovecat and I create content related to the 1920s horror author H.P. Lovecraft. Now, as you guys probably know, the Call of Cthulhu RPG is my favorite RPG to play. So today I'm going to discuss a little bit of the specifics around what time period to play this RPG in. So one of the really cool things about this game is your party can play in whatever time frame you feel like. Because let's face it, they are called the Great Old Ones. So they were out there doing their thing of horror and destruction in any time period you guys would want to play in. But the two most common time periods are 1920s and modern time. So I'm going to compare and contrast the two to help you guys decide which one is right for your party. I'm going to break this down into different categories and tell you which one I think is best for each category. So the first category I want to talk about is pre-built content. So I know some keepers love to make their own scenarios and build it from the ground up. And then there's some keepers that prefer to use pre-built scenarios to run their party through, sometimes in between. But if you're more on the spectrum where you like to use pre-built content, I will tell you that there's a lot more out there for the 1920s. Now, although you can translate 1920 scenarios into modern day, there can be some challenges like technology or certain themes that are used in the 20s that are not really applicable to modern day anymore. So just be aware of that when you're looking through content if you guys choose to use modern day. The second category I want to talk about is ease for keepers. When I think back to when I was going to be a keeper for the first time, and actually Call of Cthulhu was the first time I had been a keeper or GM for any RPG game, so I was very fresh. I felt a much larger comfort level with using the modern time frame. I was already familiar with technology and setting, so if I had to improvise, it was going to be a lot easier for me to use the modern time frame versus the 1920s. It's also a lot easier to ease into, in my opinion, because you don't have to do any prior research as to what was invented during that time frame, what wasn't, what was the culture like, what was the dress like. You don't have to do any of that research because you already know it. That was really a big benefit for me when I was first starting out as a keeper. Another bonus is that if you use the modern time frame, you can use maps that are already created and it's a simple print. Just in terms of not having that research level required up front, being able to better improvise and having more available resources like already made maps is a pretty big benefit when we think about using the modern time. Now, the third category is immersion for the players. Now, this one I was a bit torn on because honestly, I could see it going either way. For the modern time frame, since we live in it, we know what the setting is like, and we're able to picture that. So for that reason, I think it's easier for the players to relate to the setting, technology, the things that are going on around them. Now, on the other hand, because Lovecraft wrote in the 1920s, I think to be immersed in the creatures and the creepiness of everything, I think for that, the 1920s do a better job of capturing that versus modern day. All right, so the fourth category, let's talk about tech. This one is a huge difference between modern and 1920s. So nowadays we have our cell phones, we have internet, we have transportation that is really efficient. So all of those things can lead to situations in which the keeper has to work around the players because you don't want the players to get information too quickly. So communication. The players certainly don't need to be creative when it comes to staying in contact with either other NPCs or PCs in a situation where they split the party, because cell phones make it super easy. No reason to get a different form of communication. It's also something that they can use very quickly to contact police or other authorities to help them in situations where they would need it. So often it would lead me as a keeper to come up with ways so they can't use their cell phones. either they lost them or they don't have cell service, either of those things, so that the cell phone wasn't an always quick, easy answer. Another piece of tech, the World Wide Web, what a wonderful thing, but it makes it so their first instinct is to always just search something on the internet. Can I find this on the internet? Did anything come up related to gig or whatever they're encountering at the time? Instead of going to the library, which honestly, I think there's something fun about the theme of going to libraries, and it feels much more Lovecraftian to me than searching on the internet for Cthulhu Mythos research. It's just a little silly in that regards. Another point is transportation. So if you are playing a long form campaign, for example, I'm playing through Mask of Nyarlathotep with my party, and one of the key parts of that is the timeline and making sure that they get done what they need to in a certain amount of time. So part of that is travel time in between different countries. And the most common form of transportation during that time was by sea or by train. In modern day, when you can just hop on a plane really easy, get things done, that time element becomes less of an issue for those longer form campaigns. One of the other things about the technology is I feel that it actually detracts from the Lovecraft feel and the unknown and aloneness you feel when you're facing these Lovecraftian horrors, since with a cell phone you're literally always connected with other people or the internet. So I think the 1920s can be better when we're talking about use of technology and your players actually having to be creative with finding solutions. So the final category that I want to talk about is equipment, which is a little bit related to technology, but specifically I want to talk about the weapons that can be used in modern versus 1920s. So for this one, I'm busting out the Keeper rulebook. So back in the appendix, there's all the different types of guns that you can use, and it specifies if you can use it in modern era versus 1920s. And the first thing that I want to call out is there's a whole section on assault rifles that are only available in the modern time frame. In addition, a lot of the handguns and rifles have modern only variants. And the major thing to call out about that is oftentimes they're significantly stronger than the 1920s version, which makes sense due to technology advancements. But for example, the 357 Magnum revolver for modern time frame is 1d8 plus 1d4, whereas for the 1920s, it's generally 1d8 by itself. So that's just an example where some of the weapons have a slight increase in power. From a keeper's perspective, if there's an increase in power on the PC side, you generally want to even that out on the enemy side as well. So when that happens, although combat is already pretty deadly, it can become even more deadly in the modern time frame with these weapons that are more powerful. So when comparing the two eras, I think that the 1920s, it's a bit easier to get that Lovecraftian horror terror feel across to your PCs. And due to the lack of technology and not quite as strong as weapons, I feel like it's not as broken as the modern time frame can be in the Call of Cthulhu system. Now, that being said, the modern era certainly has the benefit for keepers who are just easing into playing this for the first time and has the ability to improv a little bit easier than the 1920s. Honestly, I'd say about 8 out of 10 times, my group and I are probably going to choose to play in the 1920s era. And considering most of the pre-built content is for that time frame, it seems to be the case that most people would choose that over modern day. That being said, I do want to give a shout out to the Delta Green campaign. Now, I personally have not played this yet, but it is a campaign in which you are a part of an organization that works for the government that helps keep the Earth safe from alien races and is more of conspiracy-based feel. This does take place in the modern time frame, and I've heard some really great things about Delta Green. So I would say if you're interested in modern day, maybe take a look at that and see if that's something your party would want to do, or do a few one-shots in the modern time frame. But if you're looking for a longer campaign and really want to capture the Lovecraftian feel, I think the 1920s can give you a little bit more of that. Tell me in the comments below what your favorite time frame is to play. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.